Hello, we're here.
Hi.
We are back and alive and well. As always,
We
usually.
are
We're
starting
here.
a cult.
We are starting a cult
It's Grant and
episode
Jake.
number 80-something-ish.
6, maybe?
Fuck if I know.
I'm probably wrong. I don't know.
It's been a long time.
Whole
It's been a
week.
very, very long time.
112.
But we're back. We thought it was appropriate to get back into the extraterrestrial world.
The alienage.
And the reason is because there's never a wrong time for alien stories.
'Cause they're always out there.
But if you really want to break it down into the modern world that we know right now, the pioneer of all of these stories would have to be the abduction of Betty and Barney Hill. That was, holy shit, that was fucking damn near 60 years ago.
Almost, yeah.
59.
No. Wait, years?
59 years ago.
I was going to say it was in 61.
Yeah, no, that's it.
61.
Okay.
I was like, Grant?
No, we had it right.
For the love of God.
You were looking at, you were at the year, I was at the difference of years. Okay, no, I get it.
You know what?
I'm getting it.
Oh.
But I mean, I'll tell you this, it's not an uninteresting story by any means. It is not as...
Quite the opposite.
It's not, I'm not going to lie to you, it's not as intricate or insane as a David Huggins or even a Travis Walton maybe, but it packs a punch, and it's a lot more... to me, it's a lot more scary. Because it
really is.
There's no definitive answers. It's very old in the sense of story, but not in the sense of extraterrestrial stories.
This is the case that really put in place a lot of the things that would come in later abduction cases.
Yeah, and it
really just all the tropes.
It definitely greased the wheels of media to put these stories out there and publicize them. And without this story, we might not have ever gotten some of these other, like Travis Walton or David Huggins. We might not have had those stories if it wasn't for Betty and Barney Hill, because honestly, I mean, let's boil it down to brass tacks here before we get into the actual story. You have an interracial couple in 1961 that says they saw a fucking alien and were abducted. It's insane.
So
that's a story.
There's a lot to unpack here.
That is a story that if in 1961 probably would not fly.
No, very much so.
The fact that it did, and it got this attention, it wasn't immediate, but it did get the attention. And it really kickstarted a lot of the craze of aliens in the 60s and 70s.
Yeah.
And it's the granddaddy of all of the stories. It started everything we have today.
Yeah. Before this, there were sightings of UFOs, that kind of thing. But like we were saying, these are the first people to actually say that they were abducted.
Yeah.
So let's get into it, dude. Betty and Barney Hill. This case was the first widely publicized alien abduction, right, in the United States. It occurred between September 19th and 20th of 1961 in rural New Hampshire.
Yeah, and their father-in-law was Benny Hill, the great British comedian. No, I totally made that up.
That would be fantastic.
That does always throw me off because it's Betty and Barney. So I immediately go to the Flintstones. And,
oh my God, I didn't even realize that.
Yeah, I immediately jump to the Flintstones, and then after the first second of thought, you're like, oh yeah, it's not the Flintstones, it's Betty and Barney Hill. But then when you morph them together and you say it fast, it's like Benny Hill. It's like, wait, no, it's not that same person either.
God damn, there's too many references.
It's a catch-all.
It is. This case was the first instance that regression hypnosis was used to get some information about abduction, right?
Yeah, and for those of us, well, not us, for those of the listeners that are unaware with what that is, it's simply, I don't know if we've talked about these things before, but I don't know if we've ever clarified. This regression therapy is sort of a trance-like therapy session where they put you in a slight meditative state, and they're able to get to the more subconscious thoughts that you have. And they use these a lot in these cases because, well, they're not they're not memorized. They don't remember these things.
Yeah.
But with enough poking and prodding through the subconscious meditated mind, we might be able to seek some of these buried answers and hidden memories in the human mind.
And the reason why they're buried is oftentimes the brain like refuses to go back to them, either maybe because it was too horrifying or maybe it just could not register what it was seeing.
Yeah.
So it just shut them out. So it's kind of a way of getting to those thoughts, right?
It is, playing devil's advocate here, it is slightly under the pseudoscience umbrella.
It's now considered to be a very less than reputable method of doing this. But at the time, it was cutting edge.
However, I feel like it has some merit to it. I mean, the key to a lot of these stories that we talk about are very, very subjective things and beliefs. That's really what the base of all of this is. Their encounter is extremely subjective because no one else was there. It was them.
No, it's true.
So things like regression therapy.
There was a dog there named Delzy.
Well, he doesn't remember shit.
No, probably not.
But these things, they're helpful because, I mean, even if they're not 100% factual, at least it's something coming from the victim, for lack of a better term. They're not a victim, but in this case, they would be, I guess.
Yeah. We'll get into the victimhood.
So I wanted to make sure both sides are represented.
No, yeah, of course. Benny and Barney Hill, who are these people? Right? Who are they?
Who knows?
Who goddamn
They share the name of the lovable neighbors of Fred and Wilma.
There you go. Benny, it might be Barney's son, because it's Barney Hill Jr.
BHJ?
Yeah.
Big Hamburger Joe?
No, Barney Hill Jr., Grant. He was 39 at the time. He was born July 20th of 1922 in Newport News, Virginia. Newport News is the name of the town. I had to look it up. It seems ridiculous.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I fell into the same trap when I was looking at that.
That can't be not a newspaper. But
there were a couple geographical things in this story that I was like, what?
Like, that's the name of a place?
It really made you think, because they were talking, it's New Hampshire.
Newport News, New Hampshire.
And
Newport News, Virginia. Damn it.
That's
where he was
Virginia,
born.
It takes place in New Hampshire, though, I believe.
It does.
Correct?
It takes place in New Hampshire. That was a fun fact, because they were an interracial couple. That was like one of the most liberal parts of the country at the time, so they were very accepted there.
Okay.
That's why.
And it's funny because there's a part where we'll discuss Canada, and for a minute that threw me off when I was reading, because it was like, Canada? What? And I was
Ontario.
Like, oh yeah, like geography exists. Yeah. Like,
oh yeah, there's other places.
Just because we're in the same country, they're way closer to Canada than they are to us.
Yeah. All right, so all right, Barney Hill Jr. was 39 at the time. He was born in Newport News, Virginia. Ridiculous. He was a civil rights leader. Right. He early on he wanted to be an engineer. He went to school for it, but then he was told that the engineering field did not tend to hire black people. So
that is something you'll encounter
in the 60s. Yeah. So he became a postal worker.
Okay.
Right. Very reputable government job. Good benefits, I'm sure.
Hey man, everyone laughs at the postman, but no, you can't sneeze at a good job.
They got it made.
That's a tight job, dude. Government, you get benefits.
It is.
Pensions, 401k, holidays.
You're
come on.
Friggin' set.
Come on.
Yeah.
It's a good job.
So he seems like an upstanding guy, right? And then we got Eunice Elizabeth Barrett, otherwise known as Betty Hill.
Betty.
Right? She was 41 years old at the time, and she was born June 28th of 1919 in Newton, New Hampshire.
Fuck, these are some old-ass people.
Yeah.
I mean, not to be disrespectful, but that's a long time
they're
ago.
old. They're very old. She was a civil rights activist as well. I'm pretty sure that's where they met at rallies and such.
Yeah, it was. They were actually. I was reading this thing. I don't know if I can particularly corroborate it because it was a forum post, but they were talking about where they were from, where they lived when they were married, and that they were huge parts of the local community for civil rights. And it was one of those comments where normally I'd go past it, but I feel like it's probably true.
No, yeah, definitely.
I definitely feel like it's true.
And Betty was like doing it back in like the 40s too.
Mm-hmm.
Like when she was in college. I'm pretty sure there was like a news article from back in her college days of her being like befriending the only black girl at her school.
Yeah,
that made headlines.
They were slightly ahead of their time. I mean, they're a little too progressive for where they were.
It's true. It's true. So yeah, civil rights. She held a master's degree in social work. She was the supervisor of a child welfare department.
Nice.
So these are like
reputable people.
These are awesome people. They're reputable people. They know what they're doing. They seem smart.
Yeah, they're definitely
cool.
I would say not. They're definitely not disliked. I mean, there's really no information out there about people disliking them or talking negatively about them.
Yeah, as people, like people that could look past the race thing, because there were states in the U.S. that still had like gay marriage illegal.
Well, I mean, yeah, they had that up until like 2012.
It's true.
So like it, or maybe 11. I don't remember the year, but
Obama did it.
But it's one of those things. I'm sure there are people that didn't like that, but there really weren't individuals that were against these people actively for what they did or how they acted. So
yeah, they were cool.
They were just regular citizens. They were just people living their lives until one day, boom, Andromeda Galaxy.
One day, ooh,
comes to get you.
All right, here comes the abduction, right? So in September of 1961, Barney had developed an ulcer. Doesn't that suck?
Ugh.
Sounds painful. So the couple, because of this, I guess, decides to take a fun weekend. They decide to take a small vacation to Canada.
That's like a hilarious excuse to go on a vacation.
I got an ulcer. I got to go
see
Niagara Falls.
He has an ulcer. We must go on a small vacation.
Let us take a boat tour.
It is time for a sabbatical. He has an ulcer. Are you okay?
All right. I mean, yeah.
Hey, who am I?
They had a great time. They visited Niagara Falls. They went to Montreal. They had a great time.
That'd be cool.
And on September 19th, they began their trip home back to Portsmouth, New Hampshire, which was where they lived.
Yes.
Indeed. The night was clear, and the road they were on was dark and secluded, right?
You already got the makings for a spooky ending.
There we go. All you need is some fog.
Ooh, yeah, that'd be a nice touch.
But, all right, so at around 10:15, quarter after 10 p.m., Betty and Barney were about 3 miles south of Lancaster, which is in New Hampshire.
Lannister?
I need to watch that show, Grant.
Oh.
I still need HBO.
I'm sorry,
Lancaster, not Lannister.
I don't want to be that dorky about things, but sometimes I just have to.
I think you do. So they were about 3 miles south of Lancaster in New Hampshire when Betty saw what she thought was a falling star in the sky, right? That is until the falling star halted in the sky and began moving slowly back towards the moon. Isn't that freaky? The couple claimed that it was moving like a fly, looking for a place to land.
And I think what's important to do here is put yourself in their situation throughout history. I mean, this isn't taking place in the year 2020 or 2015, where you could look at these things and say, "Oh, maybe it's a remote control this or a
trick
drone,
of the light,
or some type of reflection off of a 757."
I would honestly just write it off to a drone.
And
it's a drone.
This is in the 60s. I mean, yeah, airplanes and helicopters existed. They weren't as prevalent as they are today by any means. Drones were not available for commercial sale.
Oh, no, yeah.
They probably weren't even available in a military setting at that point yet. They were still being created.
That's when we got the fucking technology for cell phones.
So, especially seeing something like that, it's got to be slightly alarming on a secluded road in the middle of nowhere.
No, very much so.
No one had cell phones. It's not like you could call anyone. Businesses closed, so it's not you could just drive into town and go to the 24-hour store and see someone. Those didn't exist. You really just had to brave it and get to your house.
Yeah. And I'm pretty sure that Barney he thoroughly freaked out because he was like, you know what, Betty, just don't pay attention to it. It's probably a satellite. They kept going.
That's definitely that 1960s husband mentality.
It's like, that's the most advanced thing that I'm aware of, so it's probably that.
It's the trope of every horror movie from the 70s, 80s, and 90s where the dad is the dad is completely against anything happening. You're all insane. This is ridiculous. Until the very last moment.
Well, most of the time that's for like haunted houses. And it's like, I just put down fucking $400,000 for this goddamn house. I'm not moving.
It's true.
That's usually the case.
But I'm definitely getting those kind of vibes. More just like, Betty, look at the road. We're going to be home. Just don't talk about it.
Eyes front. So anyway, later, just south of Twin Mountains in New Hampshire, which is beautiful. I looked it up.
Somebody
that was another name I couldn't believe.
Some might even say Twin Peaks.
Oh my God.
You see, because mountains...
There's something here. I know it.
It's all there.
It's all here. It's always been there.
Connect the dots yourself, you lazy chump.
What are you, a sheep? All right. Later, just south of Twin Mountains, Betty and Barney stopped at a rest area to let their dog Delzy, it was a cute, adorable little dachshund. You want to see it?
Nice. Let's see.
Look at it.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Little dachshund boy.
See, I saw that I saw that very picture the other day, but I also I didn't assume that the dog was there. I was just like, oh, they have a dog.
No, yeah, but that's the thing. It's like Delzy was there. The whole reason they pulled over, but they don't really talk about Delzy afterward.
Okay.
Delzy is the MacGuffin of this story.
That is a reference I'm unfamiliar with.
It's a film term, I think. I don't even know if I'm using it right.
I'm not familiar with that.
I love Delzy.
Okay. I believe you.
The MacGuffin. But so, all right. Betty used this opportunity to get a better look at the object that was still in the sky, using the binoculars that they had. Barney, in the meantime, was more concerned about bears. So
you got to avert your eyes from the sky. We got to worry about these fucking grizzlies.
There's a herd of bears coming over yonder.
They smell the blueberry chapstick you have. They want in.
Blueberry chapstick.
He's just absolutely thrashingly upset, freaking out about bears.
Oh, dude, he definitely is, because he went to the trunk of his car. He got his gun.
Oh, he's not even scared of the animal at this point. He's scared of the football team. He's just, oh no, the Chicago Bears are coming.
I'm scared of what I'm going to do with this gun. That's what I'm scared of. So she used the opportunity to look at the binoculars, look at the sky. It was still there. Barney has a gun. And Betty then saw the object pass over the moon, flashing multicolored lights.
Disco ball.
Yeah, right? It sounds fun. But then she then handed the binoculars to Barney, at which time the object quickly changed course and became very close to them. It started rapidly descending to the earth in the direction of the couple. That's
when you punch your foot against the gas pedal and drive.
No, it's very true. That they got in the car and did just that.
Unless this is an injured cold type scenario where he'll pull up next to you in a lantern.
And just like, what's that?
And question
That's a
you
city.
very sweetly.
Like, just asking very nice questions.
And if you want to know who Injured Cold is, check out our Patreon episode on Injured Cold.
Is that our first one?
Yeah, it is.
I think it's our first Patreon episode.
It is.
Yeah.
It's a really cool story.
I wonder what we said on that.
It's a fun time. Anyways.
But anyway, yeah, so
driving.
They're back in the car. They're speeding away. This thing is hot on their tail.
Driving in my car, beep, beep.
Beep, beep. And the object is coming closer, right? They see it. It is indeed a craft of some sort, and it's enormous. It's about 80 to 100 feet off the ground, and it looks like it's keeping pace. It's maneuvering to maybe block the road, Barney thinks. So
Barney's like, oh, we got a fucking Tokyo Drift. He's got to bring out his inner Paul Walker minus the accidental death and maneuver his vehicle around this machine.
Whoa. That's crazy.
That would have been a way cooler
way. Like Macho Man Randy Savage wrapping himself around a tree.
Well, is that how he died?
I'm pretty sure he was coked out in like a Jeep. And
Probably.
He just wrapped himself.
I just remember when that Paul Walker dude died, it was just like, how ironic. I mean you died in a car and you were famous.
It's kind of fitting.
You were famous for being a car guy in a movie.
It's weird when deaths are on brand.
God has a funny sense of humor if you believe in that shit. Or karma. The world has a funny sense of humor. Just roll with it.
Chaos.
Let's have fun with it.
Utter chaos. So, yeah, they're speeding down the road. He stops because he's like, oh, God, it's going to stop us. It's maneuvering to block the road. He stops the car. He pulls out the binoculars again, and he gets a closer look. So the craft then moved in an arc from hovering above.
In a parabola-like motion.
Parabola. Yeah, it's going in a parabola, hovering over Betty and Barney's car, to hovering over a tree line of the adjacent field to the road. Right? Barney then puts his pistol in his pocket, and he began walking towards the craft, which was said to have been about 60 to 80 feet in diameter.
Okay, can we take a minute to appreciate how badass that image is of just Barney Hill getting out of his car, fed up. His wife and his dog are in the car, very anxious, and he just walks up with a pistol in his hand to an alien spaceship.
He's like, I'm putting an end to this right now.
What do you think, given the chance, are the first words he says?
He's
like, what the fuck do you want? Pointing the gun like that is
leave
just,
my family alone.
That is so. That's just.
It
awesome.
is a badass image. He's just like, you know what? Pulling over.
I gotta check this.
Gun
shit
in
out.
hand. I'm going to get it.
I like that a lot.
So he's approaching this huge ass craft. Right, it's 60 to 80 feet in diameter. As he approaches, two red lights separate from the two fin-like structures on the craft, and it tilts towards him. Right. So that's never a good sign. That's like it's not a good thing. Barney lifted the binoculars to his eyes and claimed to have seen inside of the craft figures that were somehow not human. That's a quote from him. Somehow not human. Adding later that they moved with the precision of the German military. He specifically said Nazis. Because, it was fresh in everyone's mind at this time.
That's a good call. I was just going to say that.
It was very fresh at the time.
It's not that they resembled the Nazis. It's that this is relatively new after World War II, and it's a great comparison.
It is a great comparison because they looked exactly like it. It's actually fucking weird.
I mean, okay, let's put this into perspective here. Think the year is 2006, and you live in Kansas somewhere. I don't know.
Kansas City, Missouri.
And, I don't know, a plane flies into a building. What's the immediate recollection you're going to? It's probably 9/11. That's just where it's going to go because it's fresh in your mind. Just like the Nazis are fresh in Barney's mind because it's fucking 1961.
No, it's true. So, yeah, he said that he looked into the craft with the binoculars. He saw these guys dressed like Nazis. And
Wait.
What?
I want to clarify.
Yeah.
You just said they were dressed like Nazis?
Yeah.
Real, like
they had
like Nazi military uniforms?
What they had on were shiny black like coats with fucking like motorcycle hats, like the ones with the spike, and they were black as well.
Okay.
They looked like, and they were very rigid. They were all working very like diligently, but it like almost robotic.
They're looking like Kaiser Wilhelm almost.
Yeah.
That
they
type
were
of
Kaiser Wilhelming it up.
All right. I like that. I like the uniqueness to this. It's very different than your typical story you hear.
Yeah, right.
I like it.
So apparently one of these guys that looked like a Nazi, he apparently turned like, all right, so in there he saw a bunch of guys rigidly working behind one guy who appeared to be at a desk.
Okay.
So I'm assuming that he was probably
He was the
driving.
Milton. He was the Milton. He's like, please don't touch my stapler. That was Milton.
That was Milton. And apparently when Barney was like looking around at him, just kind of getting a better look, one of them turned around and smiled at him, gave him a little smirk,
Isn't that fun? It's just like, hey, I don't know.
It's like, I know you're watching.
To me, it's the same thing as picture a bunny rabbit in your yard, and it's out. You walk outside, you're aiming a gun at it, and it just looks at you, and you just smile. That's what it feels like, because this alien's just like, it knows. It knows.
Like, look at that.
It's looking at Barney. It knows that he's afraid.
Yeah. So Barney, he got a terrible feeling that something terrible was going to happen. Like you do. But was so paralyzed by fear that it took everything in his power to tear the binoculars away from his eyes. He then started racing back to his car. And it's weird because like later when they recollect these things through regression and all that, like Barney claims that he felt compelled to do all these things, to pull over, to immediately get out, to even approach it. Like, he felt compelled to do all these things, and then he like literally could not tear the binoculars away from his face. So it's very strange. He said he saw the eyes of the leader, the guy who was behind the desk there, and he was like obsessed with his eyes. He's like, those eyes, they were like pushing themselves into my head. They were like, his eyes were inside. Like, he was freaking out about these eyes. So I feel like he may have been in some sort of trance, perhaps.
It comes back to it's the same thing I said earlier in this episode. The recurring theme in everything in here is it always comes down to some exterior feeling that you have. It's inside, but it almost feels as if something outside of your body is forcing you to feel this nervousness. And
it sounds like in a lot of these cases it's very sudden and unexpected, so it's like something else must be doing this. It can't just be my brain firing and this feeling immediately arising.
No, absolutely.
You know, so people are externalizing it much with the idea of God, you know? Like,
and if you listen to any of these cases about ghosts, aliens, black-eyed kids even, shadow beings, things that they fucking, I don't know, cryptids, things of that nature, the recurring theme in all of that is this emotion. And there's no name for that.
Utter terror, dude. It's just fear.
See, that's where I feel like it's our job to come up with a name for that. Because it's a very specific feeling. It's almost beyond fear when it's described. It's something that...
We call it something like fun. Like bubble de boop.
No, it can't be, because you don't want it, you know? You don't want it. That's the thing. But it's so intense. The way, at least to me, I picture it as someone reading these things, it's almost like an excitement / adrenaline rush mixed with absolute fear for your own life. You almost accept that death can happen at any moment, but you move past it so quickly because you're so amped up about it. And you're just ready for whatever this thing is going to bring.
It sounds just like adrenaline, dude.
And it's a very similar feeling in all of these different things.
The fear. Maybe it's like, what do you want to call it? Like, what are some of your...
I don't know. See, that's something I'm going to have to sit on.
Spoop. Maybe spoop.
No, see, it can't be like funny.
I got the spoops.
No, it can't be funny. It can't be funny. It has to be serious. Because it's one of those things, you don't want it. You don't want to see a black-eyed kid. You don't want to see an alien. You don't want to see an apparition of a ghost or a poltergeist. You want none of this. So that feeling...
The fear.
We should... The placeholder name, it's really just like AIDS. It's visual AIDS. You don't want it. You don't want it. I promise you.
Well, I don't want AIDS. I don't want a lot of other things, too. It's a crazy thing to hone in on.
No, it's a placeholder name for the
placeholder, right? So
the AIDS-like emotion
but like
you feel.
You're just like, oh, so scared I got AIDS.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like a because of thing. I don't know.
It's very
placeholder.
Unique.
We'll think of a scary word for the overwhelming feeling of dread that people get.
Yeah,
in these situations.
I don't know.
Email us some suggestions at startacult@gmail.com.
But that's, to me, that's one thing. I mean, I'll kind of talk about this later. It's just it's very interesting that's the one true similarity in every supernatural story, is this feeling.
Yeah.
And yeah, they're all subjective, but when there's a million subjective cases, you have to think statistically some of them are accurate or truthful.
Some of it, I mean, there's
That's just math.
The appropriate margin of error, but, like, there can't be errors without something being true in there,
Right, even if you're a hardcore pessimist, which is acceptable. Everyone, it takes all kinds of people, but there's no denying that, mathematically speaking, we'll say 1 million for a large number. If 1 million people all report a very similar feeling, you have to accept that at least one of those out of 1 million is a truthful event that somebody witnessed. Maybe it could be explained differently through science or other things, but whatever it was, what they believed it to be is what they witnessed.
So, yeah, the individual's interpretation of a situation can't not be right. every time.
No, exactly.
I understand.
And that, again, that's something I'll talk about later. But it's important in these stories.
Yeah. So he got that feeling, right? Barney got that feeling. He went back to his car after he ripped the binoculars from his eyes.
He got the uh-ohs.
Let's call it that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so Barney gets back into the car. Betty gets in with him, and they start speeding down the road. They are driving in utter silence.
For some reason, I totally thought you were going to say they started making out extremely. It's like,
they were
whoa.
just vigorously, just animals in heat.
It's like, sweet, dude, this story's taking a crazy turn.
Very romantic story. But
that's not what happened.
No, it's not. They were driving in silence. Not a word was spoken as they're running away from this craft. The craft, at this point, was hovering right along with them, keeping pace with the couple. All the while emitting this rhythmic buzzing noise, right? It sounded like Morse code, sort of. It was like beep, 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 with something like that underneath. See, that was good. That's what they heard. So yeah, they heard that. Then the car was starting to vibrate, and the two claimed that they were feeling a tingling feeling passing through their bodies.
Not sexual.
This is we're digging ourselves deeper into the sexual hole. So the two quickly became weak, and their minds
the knees,
dulled.
You might say.
Weak at the knees, their minds dulled. They got rid of their inhibition.
And their clothing. This just turns into a romance novel.
And then they claimed they were in an altered state of mind. I guess that was the climax. So after this, the rhythmic buzzing occurred for a second time, and the next thing that Betty and Barney knew, they were waking up 35 miles south of where they originally were, 2 hours after they last looked at the clock. So the only flashes of memories were of the two could recount. They had an orb in the road. This is a little flash of memory they could pick out. They had a quick turn off of the road, and they had a roadblock. So those are the three things they remember from this 2 hours that they cannot account for.
Yeah, and
immediately.
Sadly, again, that's another thing that's very common in these stories is lost time. And
you're just somewhere else.
It's one of those things that you can only explain so much. I mean, especially, I would say, in a scenario like this where Barney is driving a vehicle and then he loses 2 hours of memory. And that's it. I mean, nothing really occurs from there. It's so hard to explain that. I mean, you're driving a car.
How do you?
If you were to somehow just forget, you would theoretically be in one of the most dangerous positions to be in that scenario, driving a car.
You'd be Macho Manning yourself, yes.
And it's. I mean, what do you say about that? How do you really accurately tear that down and say this is what it is? It's subjective. Maybe it's not true at all. But to them, they truly lost 2 hours of time that they just could not account for. So where did it go? Yeah,
where to go? I want that time back. Those were the only flashes. They had little memories in there, but that's not 2 hours worth of memories. Where'd it go? So Barney was adamant about not telling anyone about what just happened to them.
I kind of don't blame him.
Yeah, exactly. They were an interracial couple back in the early 60s. It was difficult enough, and this story, in Barney's eyes, was not... it would not be met with anything but pushback and further hardship.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay?
That's like the last thing. Okay, I mean, it's so hard thinking about it this way, but I mean, put yourself in their shoes. 1961, a black man and a white woman, they're going to go out to the news and say they were abducted by aliens. That is going to bring nothing but negative things their way. I mean, that's just the hard fact of it.
It's the terrible reality of the
that's
kairos of this story.
That's what it was. And I mean, even nowadays, barring all of the extra stuff involved because of their race, it's still a story that not everyone would be willing to go out and share with people. Because why would you?
Yeah.
You'd be called crazy.
Even if people didn't have the extra, like, I don't know, I guess, like, social stigma, for lack of a better way of phrasing it, of being in an interracial relationship during a time period like this, people are still fucking scared to come out about stuff like this because it's insane.
Yeah, definitely.
It's insane in the eyes of most people. It's just, oh yeah, aliens hung out for a few hours. They did some tests. It's like, you can't just say that and then have me expect to come back to your house again. I mean,
I'll tell you this right now, Jake, and to all the listeners out there. If I ever have an experience like this, I will not deny it.
You won't deny it, or
no? I'll definitely tell people the story.
So you're gonna okay.
You're
gonna advertise it?
I mean, probably not, but I'll definitely tell it here for sure. I mean, how could I not? But with that being said, I mean, I wouldn't put it in the news.
A lot of people wouldn't do that.
The farthest I would go is say it here because it's just like, well, yeah, this is the area for it. This is the time for the story.
We have these microphones, perfect.
But yeah, I mean, I definitely would not go to the media or anything like that. Like, for what? Just to get made fun of and picked on? It's like, no one's gonna take you seriously. So what's the point?
There is a lot of that later on down the road. But yeah. So So Betty, however, because Barney didn't want anyone to know. So Betty, she called her sister after they got home, and apparently her sister had claimed to have seen UFOs in the past. So she was like, "Oh, she'll probably believe me," and she told her a story, right? So Betty's sister then said that her neighbor was a physicist, and got him on the phone with Betty, and his suggestion in this situation. Okay, so because all this crazy shit happened, when they got home, they were checking out their car. And on the back of the car, in the trunk, not in the trunk, but on top of the trunk, there were these two, like, metallic circles. And so she told the physicist about this, and his suggestion was to put a compass over these little circles and just see what happens. So Betty did this, and the compass began spinning around and around just constantly, which is very strange. I don't know what this means. I don't know why the physicist told her to do this, and I don't know why it spun around. But it all doesn't seem like it should be happening. So that sucks. It's crazy. It interested Betty, though, but Barney really didn't want to investigate anything any further. He's kind of stuck to his guns in that way. This was one of the many odd things that they found once they had returned home. Some other things. The leather strap on Barney's binoculars was cleanly cut. Both of their watches stopped and were to never run again. Betty's favorite dress, which she had been wearing and was in mint condition, had multiple tears in it and
a couple white stains.
Oh my god! Oh.
Was it a blue dress with white stains?
There's a cigar involved?
That sounds familiar. The white was powdered milk. They were making cookies.
Clinton was around at this time. Maybe he was doing some stuff. Who knows, man? But, so, there were multiple tears and cuts. And there was also this strange pink powder that was on this dress, right? And it seemed to be deteriorating the material the longer it stayed on there. It's like, if it stays on, it's going to make it worse. And this powder was later examined by 5 separate scientific laboratories, and not one of them could identify what it was. They have no idea what this pink stuff is.
Oh, that's residue, all right.
What kind of residue?
That is residue if I've ever seen it before in my life.
It's your run-of-the-mill residue. Classic residue. Also, there's a ton of shit that's weird. Barney's shoes also had what appeared to be drag marks on the tops of the toes. Barney also had a discomfort in his groin. In the groin area upon returning home.
Yeah, I'm sure he did.
There you go. And though nothing appeared to be wrong at the time, over the next 2 years to follow, a perfect circle of 21 warts would appear just above his penis.
Herpes.
Doesn't that sound just awful?
Sounds like herpes.
Sounds very painful.
Yeah, it's definitely not something I would enjoy.
Space herpes, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, Sounds
They just
about
clean the
accurate.
equipment aliens.
Yeah, that sucks.
Yeah. So Betty and Barney, they went to, after they got home and discovered all these weird things, they went to bed around 5 a.m. They slept until the afternoon of the next day, and that's when Betty called her sister, and they had the physicist and all that. That's when they found out all that. Her sister's name was Janet. But Janet also told Betty that she might call Pease Air Force Base. You know,
That's a weird number to ring.
Pease Air Force Base.
You just give him a call. Just tell him what you saw.
Ring up the base. Yeah. So Betty spoke with Major Paul W. Henderson, who revealed to her that something had indeed shown up on their radar the night previous. It's all coming together. It's very spooky. So Betty then went on to tell their story, right? The story of the couple, what happened. Where's Delzy? That's another thing. Where's Delzy in this picture?
It's a dog.
I hope that no.
It ran away.
It's not just a dog.
It ran away.
It's Delzy the dachshund.
Well, it ran away.
A wiener dog.
I'd be afraid of an alien spacecraft as well. If I was in that dog's position, I'd run.
Just stay in the car, Delzy. We'll be right back.
You don't know that. Interdimensional wait time is very different.
Interdimensional wait time. All right, so Betty told her story. They said there was a blip on the friggin' radar. And so in most of these reports, these types of things, they get descriptions of flying saucers, right? And they're usually discredited immediately. But the Hill story involved a craft that involved fins. And Major Henderson's report later said that it was likely that they misidentified the planet Jupiter. That's what he said happened here.
Okay.
But he also did include in the report that there was something picked up on the radar. So, what is he saying here? We don't know. Maybe some sort of cover-up.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe. You never know.
Maybe. I don't know. Do you? Email us. startacall@gmail.com. So, Betty's fully invested in figuring out what exactly happened to them, right? There's no getting her away from the subject. She loves it. In fact, on the day that they were driving home after they had woken up from the 2 hours of missing time, well, Barney was screaming at every sight of a light on the road, terrified that it would all happen again, which is real. Like, he was literally screaming in terror at lights on the road on the drive home. So Betty was smiling, kind of laughing in wonder, almost giddy. She was like, "Can you believe? What is going on?" Like that kind of thing. She seemed really into it. So she managed to get in contact with a man named Major Donald Kehoe, right? Donald Kehoe, through letter, wherein she describes the figures that Barney claimed to have seen. The shiny black uniform reminiscent of Nazi men. So after sending this letter, she actually began to get very strange dreams, which she wrote down in her dream journal.
All right.
Okay. At first, none of these dreams seemed to connect in any way, right? But after they were written down, she was able to kind of connect them into a sequence that she believed made sense.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So, these dreams would prove to be the first glimpse into what happened the night that the couple lost all that time. And in one of these dreams, she is being led through the forest by two tiny guys, and trailing behind them was Barney, right? Also being led by the two tiny guys, by little tiny guys, right? But he appeared to be in a trance. She actually called back to him, but got no response. He was just kind of shuffling along. So the little guys, they were around 5 feet tall. They were wearing matching blue suits. These were the ones that were outside in the forest, right? Matching blue suits. They looked almost human, but with gray skin and blue lips, right? So they were all being led through the woods. They eventually came to the craft. They all walked up a ramp into the craft, and once inside, the little guys began separating Betty and Barney. Very high-stakes situation. What's going to happen here? You don't know.
It's a little spooky.
So, Betty's scared, right? She was the only one in a somewhat conscious state. She begins to protest this, And when the individuals who she assumed to be the leader, explained that if they were examined together, the whole process would just take way longer. Right? It was just going to take forever. So Betty and Barney were separated. And Betty remembers walking into a room where there was another individual who was waiting, whom she referred to as the examiner.
The examiner.
The examiner. Sort of a doctor-like figure. He looked almost identical to all the others, but Betty said that he had a much calmer and more pleasant demeanor than the leader did.
Interesting.
Which is, you want that in a doctor. Both the leader and the examiner spoke to Betty in English, though the examiner spoke in more broken English, to the point where understanding him was like very, very difficult for Betty. Yeah. Right? So she said that they had an accent kind of resembling that of someone from like Western European descent. So like slightly Russian, Ukraine, maybe something like that. Ukraine. So it was explained to her that they were studying them to find out the differences between humans and them, the aliens. It sounds to me like they might have been greys. Speculate that later. So yeah, they were just trying to find out the differences biologically, perhaps. Betty was sat down. She had a light shown on her. And they cut off a lock of her hair. They examined her eyes, mouth, nose, throat, ears, and hands. They clipped off her fingernails. They examined her feet and her legs. And then used a dull tool that Betty said looked kind of like a letter opener to scrape against her arm, get some of those skin flakes.
Nice.
Some of those skin flakes. What else happened to her? They kept the skin flakes in a piece of cellophane. It looked like cellophane, at least. So they then tested her nervous system by shoving a large needle into her navel.
Wow.
They said that was her account from the dream. Later in the regression, she said that they told her it was a pregnancy test. Which just shoving a large needle into the belly, it doesn't seem safe.
Like it would work.
No. Thank God she wasn't pregnant. But, so yeah. She began reacting to the pain of the needle because, it was a huge-ass needle just going into her navel. And the leader waved his hand over her eyes, and the pain disappeared. Isn't that just magical?
Nice.
That's pretty cool. So then the examiner leaves the room, right? All the tests are done, leaving Betty and the leader there alone. There was a book in the room with many strange symbols that the leader told Betty that she could take home with her. But, unfortunately, she didn't. She just didn't take the book. She didn't take the book. But she then asked where the leader was from, right? She's trying to get to know him, at which time he pulled down a sort of star map, all right? This is it's nearing the end of what Betty's dreams revealed about the experience, but the final thing Betty gained from these dreams was the memory of her saying to the aliens themselves, no matter what you do to me, one day I'm going to remember all this.
Shit.
And then she gets into the car where Barney is waiting for her and watches as the craft flips into a glowing ball of light and shoots straight back into the sky.
Well, damn.
So that's a dream.
Mm-hmm.
That's just a dream, but maybe it happened. Also, during the time that Betty was having all these dreams, Barney was working late night shifts, and so he was never there when the dreams were happening. But he later heard about them, that she was having them. And he asserted that they were only dreams, and he implored Betty to please just goddamn drop the whole thing.
Betty, you gotta shut your mouth.
Please stop doing this. I have this ulcer, probably not fixed. All right, so he just wanted life to go back to normal. He refused to hear the dreams or to read the journal. He was truly scared by this experience, and this was intensified when Barney had the idea that both he and Betty, trying to kind of prove her wrong, it's all right, we'll both draw a picture of what we both think we saw. And they did it. And they drew identical pictures of a very long cigar-shaped craft with fins.
Ooh,
So isn't that
flying
terrifying?
dildo. That's what Beck sang about.
Is it?
Yeah, like a flying dildo crushing the sun.
Oh my god. Well, it's probably aliens. Beck is probably in with the aliens. I know he's a Scientologist. I think aliens are involved in that. Alien souls, at least. So I buy it.
I respect that.
I can buy it. But yeah, friggin', it just kind of went on from there. Like they eventually got into regression, because there was a speaker at their church. It was a very open church. They had a bunch of speakers. It was some admiral or something that had just recently published a book of poetry. Mm-hmm. And at this particular gathering, they decided to share their story with their church group, because eventually, after the whole drawing thing happened with Barney, he was like, all right, okay, something happened, maybe we have to do something about this. So they consulted their friggin' church.
Nice.
And then they got in contact with some people, some psychosis people, some hypnoticizing people, and they went through some regression. And basically all of those, all the things in the dream came through, at least on Betty's side. And there were a lot more, I wouldn't say more, but there were also a lot of very invasive things that were done to Barney, particularly with the groin area, with the penis warts. The penis warts from space. There was some sort of a device that was put over his member, and they got his semen. They got it. They got the specimen.
Interesting.
And he seemed to be sedated the whole time, so I don't really know much more about what he got from the regression, but I know that he did start crying about those eyes again.
Well, it didn't help
because those eyes were inside of him.
It did not help him because he didn't live very long.
He did not. He died.
Made it, maybe 6 years?
I think 6 years
I think
afterward.
it was 67 he died. And
he was
then
a very stressed man.
Betty
who just
died
wanted
in 2003, and she did not change her story once throughout her life. I think it's important to understand, like I was saying throughout this episode, the subjective nature of this case.
Yeah.
It clearly had a lasting effect on both of them. I mean, Barney died within 6 years, arguably because of this madness that he was suffering.
Definitely some sort of baggage he got. But one of the things that I find the most compelling that I haven't really mentioned yet, remember the star map that I said the leader pulled down when she asked where he was from?
Mm-hmm.
So in her regression, she got to go back to that moment, and she literally drew out the exact star map, as she was viewing the memory.
Mm.
And at the time, it was of something that we had no idea existed. But later on, years later, as telescopes and photography advanced, we were able to take pictures of these far away galaxies and things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And this drawing that she had exactly matched up with new findings years later. So that is one of the most compelling things for this story for me.
Yeah.
And also they had a lot to lose in coming out with this.
Pretty much.
And it showed because a lot of the media was attacking them just for being interracial, and they were attacking Barney because the thing about the warts came out. They were like, he's a pervert. Mm-hmm. He's he sucks, but that's not true. He sounds like a good guy.
Yeah, he sounds like a nice...
He's a good guy with spatial
awareness.
Warts from space.
But, I mean, yeah, keep in mind everything in this is their experience, And I believe it. I think it's an important story, and it's really... It's interesting because it's not super in-depth. I mean, we're not getting a thorough analysis of what these beings looked like, how they acted, but it almost makes it scarier because you don't know.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of times in cases of people who claim to have witnessed aliens, a lot of times the brain, when it doesn't understand what it's looking at, it tries to give features of things that it recognizes to the thing it's seeing that it doesn't understand to maybe try to make some sense of it.
Yeah.
So you're not just going insane. It's Grays. I'm assuming that it's Grays, and I feel like they may have been trying to do like, we'll try to look more human, but also it's like, they never look correct. And even that quote that I said earlier, there's like they're almost human. It's like they definitely aren't. They almost are. So it's like, is that your mind perceiving them, trying to make some sort of sense out of it? Is that them trying to make you more comfortable so that the appointment goes well? Like, what is it?
Yeah, I don't know.
It's very strange.
I'm definitely on your side with that. If it's anything, I would say it's the Greys, at least just based on other things I've heard.
They got the blue lips.
Relative.
They got the gray skin. It might be Laura Palmer. I don't know.
It could be. It very well could be.
Everything's Twin Peaks.
Everything. In a sense, it is.
Everything is.
It's an analogy for life. But effectively, that is our episode.
That's pretty much it. That's Betty and Barney Hill. They're dead now.
Yeah, sadly they are. But I mean,
that happened to them.
So, yeah.
And the rest of their lives, they lived with the fact that happened to them, never wavering.
Yeah.
So that's something to think about.
Damn right.
Damn right. Aliens are cool. Maybe you think about them more. Maybe you want more of these. Email us. Maybe give some react, subscribe there. Follow us on all the shit.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also bananas, Mitch. It's bananas that you say that because that's true.
It's true. We're near the end.
Yeah, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We're on Acast. We're on Patreon. There's links below for all that stuff. And we got our Tuesday every 2 weeks show
coming
on
up.
Patreon. And we got a sick new intro from our Griff man.
Yeah,
Griffan.
We do.
Or Griffin. Either way, he did it for us, and it's great.
Grinf.
So, yeah, tune in for that. We're heightening the intro to a whole new level.
Damn right.
Only on Patreon.
Bye-bye now.
Bananas.
Bananas.